time for Two Guys and a Goalie with Dustin Nielsen, Matt Cassian, and the goalie, Joaquin Gage.
Welcome to Panic Time, right here on Two Guys and a Goalie. Nielsen, Gage, and Cass with you. How dare this team open the season 1-1? We will get into that as we work our way through this episode. Two Guys and a Goalie, part of the Nielsen Media CoolBet Network. Sign up for an account today at CoolBet if you want to bet on the Oilers. Let's say -1.5 at home against the Buffalo Sabres on Tuesday. Yes, you can do that at CoolBet. Sign up for an account. Two Guys is the code. Number 2, word guys, 100% deposit bonus on initial deposit up to $200. I mean, boys, do you want to get to your weekends or do you want to dive into the Oilers' horrible start in back-to-back games?
Well, mine, I kind of intertwines. I was at the Battle of Alberta on Saturday. Did a little Oilers Plus. So with,
is that now available, Gager?
It's now available. Yeah, I believe.
Let's check that out.
Moon, myself, Tony Brar.
Hey, is Mooner not the best? I love that guy.
He is fantastic. Funny story. I remember when the first WHL hockey cards came out, and I had Cam Moon's card. With just his head? No, full gear.
Full gear. I have that one too.
Looked so good. And I always saw pictures of myself. I go, my gear doesn't look as good as Cam Moon's. His looks, and he had a pretty sweet name, like Cam Moon Blades. He was. I looked up to him as a young WHL up and comer. But anyway, we might have to get. I didn't know this, Dusty, but getting into the discussions with Tony Brar off camera, massive F1 fan to the point.
Oh, really?
Where he showed me his setup, and it's borderline obsessive and complete nerd. I couldn't believe what he had. I thought I was
like
bad.
For racing or for watching.
Racing. Yeah, racing. No, he's got the full Ferrari racing wheel. and
seriously,
and put a few bucks into his simulator at home. I've
seen that Ferrari racing wheel. It's good, man. I wish I had time to race still. I can't wait. Once the CFL's over, I'm getting back into the cockpit, baby. I can't wait. I think that'll be great. God, Cass, you play any video games this weekend?
I played a little Call of Duty on Friday.
You did, hey?
But, you know what? We've been playing less and less. Just kind of waiting for the next edition to come out here at the end of October. Funny story about that, because Sunday was date night. No hockey. Good time for me and the missus to get out, and we were just talking about what's coming up, and somehow I don't know how it came up, but I was just like, yeah, I think I'm going to book off the day when that new video game comes out. And kind of half joking, but kind of half serious. And so then she said to me, "Oh, well, you won't book off a day for your family, but you'll book off a day for video games." And that's not what she actually said. She didn't actually say that. But her eyes said that. Yeah, her eyes said that. So I'm not actually going to do that. But no, I
video
played
game
a
sabbatical. Do it, buddy. Yeah. Make it happen.
Yeah. Played a little bit of Call of Duty on Friday, but that was it.
Lando Norris is in the new Modern Warfare commercial.
Oh, is he? I haven't looked.
And
you love F1, eh, Gager? I love it. Is this the Moon? I'm going to put Mooner's card over my face. Okay, is that what you were talking about?
Yeah, he just looked badass. His mask.
That's such a great hockey name too.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah, that's it.
There was another guy. I don't know if I'll be able to. Man, I'm getting sucked down this WHL hockey card hole, and there was a guy by the name, I don't know, Gage, you maybe playing his name. Let me get Mooner out of here. Hang on for a sec. Let me mute Mooner. Where's all right? There was a guy. Do you remember he played for the Victoria Cougars, Kevin Koopmans? And there was a card of Kevin Koopmans he was like down in the crowd. Oh, he looks so cool. I was always like, man. Really? Kevin Koopmans looks sick. I don't even know what ended up happening to this guy, but his WHL card was sick. I know Gage got the WHL. Cash, you must have had some Western League cards, eh?
Yeah, I got some. I got pretty good flow in mine.
Do you?
I have to see. I don't have any accessible here, but yeah, I had a little bit of the hair coming out of the helmet. Looks pretty good. There's some, I know there's the Vancouver Giants ones too, with just youthful cast at 16 years old that I look pretty good too. Yeah, not as many miles on the old face. Definitely.
Yeah. Here, I got Koopmans. I just grabbed Koopmans off there. Here's Koopmans. How
Oh,
sweet
yeah.
is that?
Yeah, that looks pretty good. I'm surprised
That
he
card
even
looks
played,
awesome.
though. That was all Steve Passmore back then. So
Was that Passmore back on that team? Yeah.
Yeah, I
Well, maybe
think
this
that
guy
was-
didn't play much.
No, he didn't play much at all. I would have remembered him, but yeah, no.
Yeah.
Sweet cat eye mask. I like that.
Yeah, great look. Absolutely terrific look. Kevin Koopman. Maybe he listens to the podcast. Who knows? I don't know what happened to that guy. All right, we've delayed it long enough. You know what? I called the Elks game. Tough loss Saturday. And our crew was staying at the Westin. So I went to the Westin and we walked over to Sherlock's to watch the game. Get inside, sit down, 4-1. I was just like, what the hell happened in this game? So, Gager, break it down, buddy. What'd you think of the first 10 minutes of that Battle of Alberta?
Let's go Cass first, because I find I was in the press box for it, and I find I have completely different views of the game when I'm sitting there opposed to at home on TV.
Oh, it's way easier. Your view is going to be better than mine, but I'll give my impressions here. This is what I thought. Unlike however many people texted into the show blaming Jack Campbell for everything and wanting to trade the goalie already, which I think is completely bogus. Woodcroft agrees with me. The whole team, Draisaitl, agrees with me. Their defense did a horrible job in front of the net. So their net front battle level and their ability to clear bodies, pick up sticks, and have good positioning in front of their own net, that's where they fell apart, in my opinion. And they just turned over too many pucks. So bad turnovers and poor net front play in their own net. That's the story of the game to me. Because once they clean that up, they stopped giving up so many grade A chances against. They were able to actually start generating some momentum. But that first 10 minutes, they just, I mean, you look at the one goal, was it Bouchard basically stopped? His skates were below the goal line, like their own goal line. Like, and he's basically reaching to try to battle somebody in front. It's like, you can't have that happen. Not going to go well for you. Not a recipe for success.
Is that what you saw up top, Gager?
Yeah, it was like, because you can see everything. And really, to me, it looked like the Oilers were, their recognition of the play, like they were 2 steps behind the Flames, like all over the ice. And you noticed right away, they couldn't make a pass within the first 12 minutes of that game, whether it was 3 feet or 15 feet. Horrible passing. And the Flames looked like the quicker team, first of all. And the Oilers were, their intensity level and their execution level were so far below. It was quite mind-boggling to me, that first period, how far behind the play they all seemed. Cass, you talked about the goals themselves. I mean, the first goal, it's an amazing save just to stop that puck, because I think it was Holloway that kind of lost his guy and then put a stick, blocked the shot, broke the stick. Campbell still makes the save, and everyone's just sitting there watching. Like, there was no anticipation from anyone in their own zone. Like, okay, the play's going here. It was just sitting and watching the whole time. Yeah, you'd like Campbell to probably stop the breakaway, but the first and fourth goal, everyone was just waiting to see what happened. No one was taking anyone in front. It just seemed like a team totally disheveled. It was quite odd to watch that first period. But saying that, yeah, I had to give a lot of credit to Calgary. They played really well. Like, they were on the Oilers every chance they got and making it very difficult for the defensemen. I know they talked about the D not playing well. They need another guy in there. I don't think that's the case yet after 2 games. They just have to bring their level back to where it should be.
Cass, how do you look so disheveled like that early in a game? Just Calgary's just running your show, or you're like nervous? Like, how's that? How's that happen? How do you look that much of a mess 10 minutes in?
I don't even know. I think maybe, Calgary was probably getting themselves worked up in the room that this is the team you have to go through, and this is the team that's knocked out of the playoffs, and this is the team this, and McDavid that, and they just got more fired up for the game, more ready to go. And I mean, it just, mistakes oftentimes in hockey games can compound. where one person makes a mistake, another person tries to cover and makes a mistake, and then it just builds, and it just feels like they just were never really able to settle in and recover, at least during that early part of the game. And they eventually did, but they weren't able to stop the bleeding right away, which is a problem. I mean, it's a huge problem. We saw it last year where they had all kinds of issues with this as well. It's not like this is something new. And to me, it says it's, not on coaching. At that point, it's on the guys in the room and that leadership group to be ready to go, and their best players being the best players from the drop of the puck instead of working their way into it. Which, I mean, again, it's game 2 in the season. They're 1-1. Like, let's not freak out here. But
they were down 3-0 and 4-1 in games, right? Yeah, so I mean, it's
not good.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the blue line I thought in this start against Calgary was atrocious. But Gager, Cass said it, man. Like, we talked about it last year a number of times, regular season and playoff. We talked about it with Tippett. How we talked about it with Todd McClellan. They didn't start well under him either. I mean, a lot of the common themes are, McDavid and Draisaitl, and when they're pushing hard, they're phenomenal. But how do I don't know? Like, we're if it's not on the goaltending or it's not on the coaching, Gager, who's it on? Like, why is this happen?
Yeah, it's I mean, I was thinking about it, and maybe it's like, okay, we and I'm just taking this one game into account.
Yeah.
But it seems like, okay, we beat these guys. It's basically the same team as last year, right? A few different pieces, but we beat these guys in the playoffs. This is great. We're going to go out there. We're going to probably do this again. And it seemed like the Oilers thought they could just throw their sticks out there and produce something that was reminiscent of last year in the playoffs. And on the other side in Calgary, you had all these new additions. And of course, they've been hearing, is Calgary a better team, or are they not as good? These guys wanted to go out and show that they're a better team than they were last year. And what happened last year in the playoffs isn't going to happen. Like, what an opportunity for the Flames to show that they can win in Edmonton. And I mean, it's the only game here, right? That's a massive confidence.
That's the one.
Booster.
They got it, right?
Without Markstrom in net.
Yeah.
Without Markstrom in net. Yeah. Good point, Cass.
But I mean, if the Oilers had to do anything, Dusty, I would go to such a simplified game. And I know it's not a dump and chase style of hockey anymore, but just making everything simple as possible and adding at least a little bit of physical play. I mean, there was nothing out there, no forecheck, no sustained pressure. It's like they waited to get mad that Calgary was winning by 3 goals to get into the game. It was just very, very odd. Like they got to do something, because this is it's been 4 years of slow starts. Simplify the game, get some hits, get everybody into it. I don't know, Cass. Maybe it's penalties too. Like, it's tough for everyone to get into the game with the penalties at the beginning of the game and stuff like that. But still, that's not really an excuse.
No, it's tough for guys to get into the game worse than penalties. I mean, I always hated early penalties in hockey games, because then I knew I wasn't going out for another couple minutes. And like,
you weren't on penalty kill or power play, Cass?
No. I always thought, even with how I did in practice, I always thought I deserved a shot at penalty killing, because I played smart, and I did, even in junior, like a lot of my minutes were penalty killing minutes. But
would you ever go ask the coach? Would you be like, "Hey, man, no."
Kevin Constantine was Kevin Constantine, and then you get pegged into something, and you never get an opportunity at it. But I mean, the goals against are bigger than that. Like, and for all those third, fourth line guys especially, your depth players, the second you get scored on like 2 or 3 shots into the game, you're just going like, all right, well, here come Connor and Leon together, and they're going to start rolling every second shift now, because we need to get back into this game.
Let's talk about that, Cass. Like, 2 games in, they start with the line combinations, but things go poorly, and it just goes, well, McDavid and Draisaitl, best way to win this game, put them together. I guess you just continue to do that anytime you fall behind most of the season, or do you allow the line combinations to freaking stay together and try to grind out a win that way?
Well, what would you do in the playoffs, Dusty?
Well, in the playoffs, I mean, early in the series, I might not panic and put them together, but the issue, I guess, is if you're going to do it all regular season, then you have to do it in the playoffs. If you allow Draisaitl and Hyman to stay together and play, and Kane and McDavid to stay together and play, then maybe you don't have to go full-blown panic mode in the playoffs. Like, I just feel like 2 games into the season, and all you've learned is that this team can only play when McDavid and Draisaitl are together, which I don't think is a great message to send to everybody early on.
You're also down a whole bunch of goals early. Like, and you're not talking like being down 1 goal. I think being down 1 goal is dramatically different than being down 3 goals early in a game where you need to get back. So I don't know. I don't have a problem with him reworking the lines to do that, because it adds offensive punch. I don't think you want to be running it all year, but it is how you'd run it in playoffs. If you're down 3 goals in the playoffs, guess what? Those guys
in the playoffs, if you're down 3, yeah.
Yeah, and it's the same mentality, I think, that they're running with it. So I don't know. It doesn't bother me so much, Gager. What about you?
Yeah, where are you come out on, Gager?
No, I just think, yeah, if it's 1 goal, it's not happening. But they're down by 3 10 minutes into the game, and it's the big. I can see in the home opener that he did it right away, because you want to win that first game.
Yeah,
but we heard it last year with who said it was, he was happy to be more involved in the play because
Derek Ryan.
Derek Ryan said that it wasn't the go to the Draisaitl McDavid option right away, right? So it got everyone else in the game, and I think we saw how much better the team performed when that didn't happen, and there was more flow throughout the lineup. So that's a fine line to walk, just going to those guys so early in the season like this. But I really think that Woodcroft's going to go back to a more balanced lineup. And I mean, with those 2 duos that you mentioned with Kane and McDavid and Hyman and Leon, those are any team would die for those 2 duos on their team, right? And to establish that and have a 1-2 punch, I think is more beneficial for the team long run over the 80 games left, compared to just doing what they're doing right now.
Here's what was at practice today, which you would think would probably lead into the game against Buffalo on Tuesday, and we'll get to the goaltending in just a second. McDavid between Yamamoto and Kane, Draisaitl with Puljujarvi and Hyman, Nuge with Fogle and Holloway, and then McLeod with Shore and Malone and Ryan kind of rotating in on the 4th line. So Yamamoto back up there with McDavid and Kane. Puljujarvi, who I don't mind him and Hyman together. I think they create some issues on the forecheck. And then Holloway, who's been limited to less than 9 minutes in both of these games so far, with Ryan Nugent-Hopkins and Warren Fogle on the 3rd line. Has not been a good start to the year 5-on-5 for everybody, or specifically Nuge. I know he's been getting ripped a lot on the inbox at the radio station. But, Cass, what do you think of those? Who knows? Maybe they fall behind 2-0 and everybody's mixed up again. But what do you think of those 9 guys heading into the game against Buffalo?
It sounds deep to me.
Yeah.
And like for Holloway's minutes, it's been tough because he's been down so many goals. So you're going to go to something more proven. I mean, if you're up 3 or 4 goals, then you can absolutely roll him and let him get some of those minutes in. But you're trying to work him in cautiously here. Nuge hasn't been horrible. He's got some minuses, yes, but he hasn't been awful. I think the problem has rested with the team as a whole. Like, I can't even remember if he's on the ice for this one, but are you gonna blame Nuge for Kulak blowing a tire at the blue line? Like, are you gonna blame Nuge for Evan Bouchard being below the goal line when he should be stopping in front of the net to battle net front? Like, there's stuff that's just not his responsibility that has happened when he's been there. And I don't know. I'm not jumping on the Nuge hate train. I actually told this to Tom when the inbox was hot and people were losing it on Ryan Nugent-Hopkins. This is what I said, and it is totally true. You're not going to get mad at Connor McDavid. He's too good.
I heard this. I was driving home. I thought, good point. Yeah.
It is true. You're not going to get mad at Leon Draisaitl. He's too good. So out of the forward group, which high-profile player are you going to start ragging on? Nuge is the obvious answer. So people are going to take out their frustration somewhere. And to me, it's like, they're not going to go to Kane as much because he's a winger. You're not going to. Some people maybe will go after like a Yamamoto, or some people will go after a Puljujarvi, but even then you look at those guys and you're like, well, are they your game-changing guys? Well, not necessarily. I think right underneath the list of Draisaitl, McDavid, people put, even from a contract value standpoint, they're putting Ryan Nugent-Hopkins. And so if you're going to harp on somebody that's easy to harp on given the losing situation, you're going to go to Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, and he doesn't deserve it. Not at all. But that's what people are going to do.
Yeah, that's probably a good process of elimination. I mean, it does kind of make sense. I think it's a pretty decent
people aren't going to be like, "Whoa, McDavid sucks. Draisaitl sucks." You can't.
Oh, people will say that.
Well, okay, all right,
but not as often and not as vocally and be as proud of it.
Right.
Yeah.
There you go.
That's true. All right. It also looks like Stuart Skinner's in the starters net today. I think what the original plan probably would have been Skinner, right? A couple for Campbell. Buffalo rolls into town. You give it to Skinner. So I probably shouldn't read too much into it, Gager. But his last game last year, he had a shutout, then was sent down. Comes in, couple scoreless periods here. Are you excited to see Skinner get the start against Buffalo? And what do you expect from him?
Yeah. I mean, what is it? Is it 5 periods of shutout hockey for Stuart Skinner?
Yeah, 5 in a row.
Yeah. So, I think it's time. I like the fact that that he's getting the start. He's proved over his last 2 games that he deserves to get a start in the NHL. His game was great, man. He locked it down in the second period. Made some really good saves, allowed the Oilers to get back into it. Really, both goalies. It's so different from last year. Just noticing the positioning and being in pretty good position most times. Not a lot of swimming around. I think it's really important for Skinner on the one side too, for just giving his teammates confidence of him being in net. Right? That's got to grow, and even for the coaching staff to feel like, man, this guy went in after, against the Calgary Flames, Battle of Alberta, Saturday night, hockey night in Canada, and performed like an NHL goalie should. So start building that confidence in his coaching staff, his teammates. That's exciting. Hopefully he can come in and have a really good game tomorrow night. Yeah,
you want to trust your backup. And
yeah.
You wanted your players to know that when he's going in there, he's going to give you a chance to win. And he did that against Calgary. I am a little surprised he's getting a start. I thought after him playing a majority of the game against Calgary that they go back to Campbell. So little surprise on that. However, they maybe just said to the goalies, hey, we're just going to stick with the plan. As you mentioned, Dusty. So, the plan originally was for Skinner to play in this one. So we're going to go with Skinner and let him roll. So it makes sense. I did think they were going to go back to Campbell, but it'll be good for the young man to get a start here. His first official start as official backup. And as Gager said, I think, if he can come in and just have another solid showing, it just builds that confidence in the group where they're not, when he goes into the net, they're not just like, oh boy, Skinner's in, like, I don't know what's going to happen out there. And that's important for a team to be able to not play as if they're worried about the goaltending. They can just go out and play. So should be an opportunity for him and for this group too to start a game well.
That's the important part, Cass, is knowing that when the other guy goes out, that you don't have to change your play style so much to compensate for it, right? This guy, you have the faith that, if I do make a mistake, he's still back there, and I don't have to do too much when I'm defending, so the other team doesn't get a shot on this guy.
Yeah, it's like, we had, and he totally faked it. So this was back my first year pro, and I played a little bit in the East Coast League, and we had an emergency backup goaltender, and he had been around the team for a long time. And so towards the end of the game, it was like our goalie got hurt, so he could go in. And it's like if in the NHL you had an emergency backup goalie that actually had to go in. It's like your play style changes because that any shot could go in the net. Any shot could go in the net. And it's a bigger example, but if you don't trust your goaltender, that's the that's the mindset and the psychology that starts getting in your brain is like any shot can go in. I can't let anything towards the net. And sometimes it means you play well and play more desperate, but more often than not, it means you're squeezing your stick because you just don't trust the guy. So it's so important to trust that backup goalie, like whether he's starting the game or whether he's coming in relief, like you got to have that trust. So again, for Stuart Skinner to have that outing against Calgary, he was solid. And as Woodcroft said, I mean, he was a bright spot in a game where they did some really poor things.
How early, like, when is it not early anymore? Obviously 2 games in, it's early. I mean, 2 games, but Castle, like, if we're still talking about poor starts 10 games in, like, is that still too early, or is that kind of like, hey, get your shit figured out here?
No, 10 games to me. And I had coaches that would say this is like, after 10 games, you should generally know what your team is. Generally, you've had a chance to iron out the kinks. You've had a chance to have some practice. You've played some good teams. You played some not as good teams by that point. You played some games on the road. You played some games at home. You should have a general sense. Again, not always true, not always accurate, but generally you should have an idea of what your team is. And so it's like, if you start struggle and you struggle in like 4 or 5 of your first 10 games, especially if they're the latter ones, like games 8, 9, 10, then all of a sudden we have to be like, okay, something is seriously wrong with how this team is starting. And the trouble right now is that we just saw them do it so often last year where it feels like there's carryover, because it doesn't feel like it's totally fresh, like, oh, it's just been 2 games.
Yeah.
And that's where people are nervous about it. But I still give them to game number 10 to get it sorted out.
What are you, Gager? How do you view that?
I go a little bit more. I think 15 to 20 is how I go. I thought there was too many preseason games. Like it's too much. I think 4 or 5 max, and then those last 2 you get your lineup together. It just seemed, just by what I saw, it looked like a team that never played together before on Saturday night, right? Like everyone was on a.
It's almost the whole same group.
I know. That's what's so puzzling about it, and maybe it's a little bit of, like I always thought when a team has a real successful year, they have to. You kind of have to treat that as a team that has a poor year too. You don't want to think about a terrible season the year before, but you take some of the things with you into the next season that you possibly could have learned. And I think the same goes for a really good season. Yeah, the Oilers were 8 wins away from a Stanley Cup, but there's a realization there that there's the whole process starts again. It's not going to pick up right where it left off, but to me, it looked like a team that had a bunch of family members and people telling them how great they were all summer and that they didn't have to do much, and you start hearing stuff too much. You start believing your own bullshit after a while. It just, they got to get back to what made them successful before.
All right, quickly before we wrap up, thoughts on the Oilers here, but Cass, initial impressions of the Calgary Flames this year, buddy. What do you think?
They look pretty good. I mean, I still have the question of, are they going to be able to now? I think you score that many goals early, it's a different type of hockey game for that group. But my question long term for them is, are they going to be able to sustain through the entirety of the regular season and the playoffs the way that they need to play? I mean, and that Sutter demands that they play. That to me is still the big question. As far as how the team looked, they look pretty good. They have just a solid defensive core. And that is going to be what this team is built around. They have. I still question if they're as good offensively with Gaudreau and Tkachuk gone. Does Kadri bring enough replacement? Does Huberdeau bring enough replacement? Those questions are still up in the air for me. But it looks like a pretty good group. Like they look pretty good. They looked really good on the weekend. But yeah, still, as I said, just like with the Oilers, you kind of got to give them another couple games here before we really know what they are.
Yeah, I would think so too. Gager, anything really stand out for you? Or
just from what I saw, obviously small sample size, but to see, I think the jewel of this whole thing is going to be that Uyghur. That guy is a special player. Like, he's really, really good. I had the ISO cam on him for a few shifts, and he does everything right.
Well, turns out it was a pretty good trade after all, I guess. Hey, before we wrap up, you mentioned Steve Passmore, so I found a little Steve Passmore. Imagine getting that picture on your WHL hockey card. Like, are you kidding me?
That's the thing.
Pretty sweet.
That was a blocker save that passed. That's the thing. That's what he always did. So don't worry about it. That's all on purpose.
That was something that he liked to do, hey?
Oh, he had a great glove, though. I'll give him unbelievable glove. Great puck hand. Oh, he was a really good goalie. He's Memorial Cup champion. Like, he's awesome. But he had one hell of a glove. Just awesome. Just awesome.
Tell me about this guy's glove.
Oh, it was a little weak, but sweet setup. Funny thing about that. So
that's a good looking gear, Gager.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, because I didn't want to wear Cooper. I couldn't wear it, so I don't know. I got some Brian stuff, and I actually had to take the X-Acto knife and get it off and paint Cooper on the sides of it. That
really
probably wasn't legal at all. Yeah, so because I got.
Why couldn't you wear Cooper?
I didn't like it. It was awful stuff. They came a long way. I probably could have changed, but I just I was kind of set in my ways after a while. And
it's a good look.
Brian's
I like those red pads.
Brian's was awesome, man. I always went with the solid color pads, and those jerseys. Those are some of the best jerseys ever.
Can I touch on a Steve Passmore story?
Sure. Yeah, of course.
So this would have been back when I was in Kamloops. So he actually came back, and he was there for a little bit skating with us. And I will never forget. So he started he called them his goalie impressions. So he would mimic other goalie styles and drills, and he had them down to a T. Like from Dominic Hasek to like Patrick Waugh, like he did everybody, and it was hilarious. One of the funnier things I've seen a goalie do in a practice, like where he would mimic the stance and then their style, and obviously he'd over exaggerate for what they do, but it was pretty funny. I enjoyed it thoroughly. Got a good laugh out of it with Steve Passmore there.
Talk to Cam Moon about some good Passmore stories. It's well, I got tons too, but we'll have to go over them first before I start talking about them.
Yeah, I might have to track that down. I gotta. This is another card of Passmore that it doesn't make him look as cool, to be honest with you. Not as cool there as he was on the other one. Yeah.
No, yeah.
A little bit of a younger version there. Look how little he is compared to that net. My goodness. All right. So there you go. That was fun. I got all these cards. They're kicking around the house somewhere. As you know, I'm kind of obsessed. So it was fun to kind of dive into that. All right. Okay. 2 minutes. We'll wrap up. We've all seen Andor now. We're up to speed on Andor. Gage, you were the last one to watch it. I was telling you guys, I cast saw it too. We're like, so good. Do you love this last episode or what?
It's amazing. Like a Star Wars story like this is something I've been waiting for a very, very long time. Like the birth of the rebellion and just how it's all coming together here. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
Probably I mean, I'd have to put Mandalorian first still, but Andor is probably number 2 right now.
Yeah.
Of all this.
Yeah, that's
Star
fair.
Wars that I've watched, it's solid, really solid.
To me, the big thing, and we hinted at it before, is when stuff happens, not even to the main characters, because it's like we know ultimately what happens to Cassian Andor. Like we know the end of that story, but it's all the auxiliary characters along the way, and it's like when you care about them, like, and when something happens to the characters and you feel it. That to me is how you know they've done a good job of developing the show and writing and the characters, because it's like, I mean, I think I mentioned it to you guys, like when the young guy's back gets broken in the ship, and you're just like you feel that back break.
Yeah,
and you only knew him for like 2 episodes, and you're like,
right.
Yeah.
But they do, like with his manifesto and his writing, like they do in little things, because it's not like he got a ton of screen time. But in the little screen time he had, like you learned enough about him and about, you know, his motivations and his character of and what character, not as in like, you know, writing the character, but characters and like who he was as a character, like the character of his person. And that when something like that happens, it's like you feel that, because it's like you don't want to see that happen to him. And you kind of get the foreshadowing before where, you know, Anders kind of talking with him and, you know, building him up before everything with the nerves and all that. But yeah, it's just like you see, and ultimately he dies doing what he believed was right. Yeah. And you feel it. Yeah, it's just, you feel it with all the characters. And then even, you know, seeing Andor's like his snap judgments to make decisions that, you know, to kill people, where you're just like, again, even, you know, where he ends up, and you know, he's not like this good, holy dude that just does everything by the book. It's like, well, no, there's some real weight to the let's call it darkness in the way that he fights. It's just awesome. So I loved it. Even what's the girl's name that was leading the team? I can't remember her name.
Oh shoot, yeah.
But like when she's like just displaying the nerves, right? Like where she's even second guessing like the go order on it, like where you can feel like, because she feels the weight of what they're about to do and the danger of it. Like it just, I don't know, the stakes were high, the action was great, visually beautiful, like the event, like with all the stars, like it was visually it was gorgeous. I can't remember the name of the lady that directed it, but just a fantastic job. Like, what a great episode.
It was really well done. It really was. All right, we can talk about it more, but I got people coming to pick up a chair from the house that needs to be repaired. I think they're knocking on the door, so I'm going to jet. We'll be back with another episode on Thursday, boys, and we'll have some more others to talk about then. We'll talk to you guys later.
Later.